Welcome to Themantics, where we talk everything in the realm of themed entertainment design. Today, we're going to be talking about video games. Wait, I know what you're thinking. This isn't a video game channel, but hear me out. What if I told you that theme parks and video games are more alike than you'd expect? Now, let's say you have a park in need of a new attraction. Depending on what it is, you can start to discover your target audience. Would you bring your grandma on a roller coaster or send a child through a haunted house? No, of course not. Now, those may seem like common sense decisions, but sometimes when you're trying to attract the largest possible audience, you'll find that it's difficult to remain empathetic. Before we continue, I want to introduce you to Richard Bartle. Earning a PhD in the new field of artificial intelligence at the University of Essex in the 1980s, he was originally known as a prolific game designer. One day, he hit a developer block. He was working on a project that just seemed too vast. The game was losing its footing because Richard was trying to make it a game that everyone would like. Bartle thought, what does my player look like, and how can I make this something that they would enjoy? He started thinking of different players that he had encountered when taking part in multiplayer games, and even asked others in the gaming community what kind of games inspired them. Of all of the gamers that he had encountered in his travels, he had made an amazing discovery. There were really only 4 types of players. You had the Achiever, the Explorer, the Socializer, and the Killer, presented perfectly here on this wonderful chart from our friends over at Extra Credits. The Achiever is the one who plays all the quests and checks all the boxes. Generally, the person who finishes the game with 100% completion. The Explorer is the person who's told the next narrative point and instead spends their time looking for Easter eggs. If you've played Breath of the Wild, they're the person who preferred to blindly travel Hyrule without ever completing the map. The Socializer primarily wants to engage with the characters and other players in the world of the game. They're the person in Pokemon who traded for a Farfetch'd named Dux, and it became their best friend for the rest of the game. The Killer, well,
some men just want to watch the world burn.
They care more about dominating other players than any external objective. This person is always a little too interested in PvP play. So there he was. Bartle had filtered it down to his 4 possible players. It wasn't perfect, and we'll get to that in a later episode. But it was a start. The Achiever, the Explorer, the Socializer, and the Killer were his audience. The archetypes that gave his mission humanity. Now, what if I told you that these 4 types are equally reflected in theme park guests? Alright, let's do this one last time. The Achiever, the Explorer, the Socializer, and the Killer. So grab a big old bottle of frothy butterbeer, folks, because I'm going to tell you about the day that these guests had at the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. The Achiever is the person who wants to ride as many rides as they can. They only care to get on the 3 rides that are there, and then once they're done, they move on to the next attraction. Oh look! Our fun fact carrier pigeon has arrived! Thanks, buddy. Fun fact, Disney has a metric that most guests feel that their day at a Disney park has only been fulfilled if they've completed an average of 8.5 attractions. I don't know what that 0.5 is. I guess it must be DCA's Tower of Terror. I'll take you on that. It's not as good as you remember, and it never was! The Explorer. This is the person who sees the open door leading into Honeydukes and cannot ignore the promise of robust glass jars full of assortments of colorful sweets and the sugary aroma of candy, despite the beautiful castle at the end of the street. They recognize where the designer wants them to go, and yet they just go and do the exact opposite. The Socializer. They're the person who walks into the land wearing some classy 1920s garb, a Hogwarts robe, and to top it off, a custom-made leather wand holster they got from a merchant in the Lost Continent. In a clear, non-verbal way, they communicate that they are a member of this world and that they wish to communicate within the world's story and vernacular. The Killer. Okay, I'll be honest, this is a tough one. The best I could come up with were the guests who scare strangers at Halloween Horror Nights, or the ones who pay 25 cents to spray writers on Dudley Do-Right. If you can think of an example of a type of guest who wishes to dominate another guest's experience just for the sadistic sake of knowing that they can do it within the rules of a theme park, please put it in the comments below or tweet it at me, because I'd honestly love to hear what you think. Now that we know our individual players, I'm going to take it a step further. Unlike a video game, your audience is not a singular individual who is just one of these types. They are a spectrum. We have a unique situation in theme entertainment design. Our ability to thrive does not primarily exist on single-player buy-in. The desired audience is not the individual, it's the unit. Whether that be a family, a group of friends, a school field trip, whatever. Bartle realized that maybe every game shouldn't be intended for every player. But that's okay. It doesn't have to be. When you find your story's intended audience, then you gain the most important tool: empathy. In our industry, the late legend Marty Sklar, I think, said it best when he stated it as his #1 rule: know your audience. Richard Bartle just codified it. Games and theme parks essentially have the same goal: to immerse their audience within a world that exists parallel to our own. One where things are more extraordinary than our day-to-day existence. While they share the same goal, themed experiences are better at realism and tangibility, while games are better at agency and interactivity. It is imminent that these two worlds will one day collide as video games become more and more realistic and theme parks become more and more interactive. The end goal is to create a world where the audience gets to be the hero like in a video game, but now within the tangible, realistic environment of a theme park. Bartle's Taxonomy is a useful tool in helping to find your audience early in your creative process. The best attractions are the ones that have a little bit for each guest type. Except for the killer. Whew, that guy's nuts. Richard Bartle created a tool to guide us through the process, in which the goal is often so elusive to us as designers. He wanted to create a mental icebreaker to help us build empathy. Sometimes it's hard to connect to your audience when there's so much noise vying for their attention. Putting yourself in their shoes is the most important frame of reference when creating your project. Although we may enjoy it alongside the audience, we must always hold them in a higher regard than ourselves. Their love of our work fuels our ability to make it. So I ask you, what kind of person could possibly be more deserving of our best efforts than our raving fans? Art is about connecting with others in an emotionally engaging way. We cannot engage until we've developed empathy for our audience. The secret of the Bartle types is that they don't just represent gamers, and they don't just represent theme park guests. They represent people. So go forth with this tool, and don't be afraid to try and connect with real people. They're your audience. With focused empathy on your side, you'll find a lot of creative questions are answered very quickly, and your project will always shift in the direction of improvement. Your work impacts people. Your care and passion will be recognized, and when you can empathize with your audience, you're going to make a whole lot of people very, very happy. Thanks for coming along for the ride. We'll see you next time.